Hello, my name is Sydney and my accent is botched. If you've been following me since the start of all of this, you'll know that I have never really sat down and explained why my accent sounds as ridiculous as it does, despite the fact that almost everyone ever has asked me. As a lot of you also will know, I'm in the United States at the moment, more specifically in Colorado at my uncle's house, which is why the scenery is a little different, and I just really don't have the time between seeing family members and going places to sit down and make a proper video. But if this is not your kind of content and this is not what you really want to see from me, that's absolutely fine. Just give it a couple weeks till I'm back home and back to making my usual stuff. But for those of you who are interested in why I sound like I do, this is my explanation and I won't waste any more time on this weird exposition. So for some context, my parents are from two different continents. My mom is from the United States and my dad is from Australia. No brainer there. The other thing that a lot of people have asked me as well, and this is a side note, is why I have dual American-Australian citizenship, and that is because I guess I was entitled to it because my mom is an American citizen and I was born abroad. Ergo, I have American citizen born abroad paperwork and a piece of paper that, you know, verifies me as an American human being. So that's kind of cool. What I've theorized based on how I grew up, and mind you, I don't know, this might not even be a thing, this is not backed up by science or statistics, this is just my assessment of what happened during my childhood. Growing up, my mom had an awful lot of input on how I spoke, how my brother and I spoke, and how we learned to understand the English language, how we learned to sound out words and use phonetics, and things like that.
Crikey barracuda. Crikey barracuda. Australian for bear.
So the assessment that I've made, from thinking about it, is that having my mom be the predominant influence on the way that I was speaking and saying words, and obviously spending most of my time with her, I think I learned to adopt her way of talking based on that. So for instance, if I was reading a book and I said bridge, and then she repeated it back to me to correct it or whatever, I probably would have adopted her way of saying it over my dad. And this is not to say that my dad didn't have input in my childhood, because he absolutely did, but he didn't have input in the same way that my mom did insofar as learning to talk. Growing up, both my brother and I did have American accents, and my brother, I think, sounded very American up until he went to school. So when he started primary school, I think that just being around the Australian accent so much more than the American accent probably just started to change the way that he pronounced things, and slowly but surely, he lost his American accent. Although some of the sounds that he makes are kind of American, sometimes. Contrary to popular belief on the internet, where a lot of people like to comment on my videos and say things like, "She only sounds like this because she watched a lot of American movies growing up." This is meant to be typing, just by the way. I don't know who types like that. I definitely don't. I definitely don't sound like this because I watched a lot of American television. But different to what my brother went through where he went to school, I guess I went to school and didn't lose my accent at all. But I did get picked on a lot for it because I sounded American and I wasn't from America. So I definitely made a concerted effort over the years as well, like my brother, to dial back and lose the American accent, which is probably why I ended up with this. All this. So good. As I got older, I just sort of noticed that my accent wasn't changing, and although I put effort into sounding more Australian and making words sound more Australian, it just isn't how I naturally talk, and it doesn't actually feel right to speak like that, despite the fact that I can do a very good American accent and a very good Australian accent. So this is how I sound, and it's not an interesting story. It's not like I lived in, the Peruvian mountains. That's not even in America, but that doesn't matter. It's not like I lived in the Rocky Mountains in a cave for 1,000 years and, and then maybe I'm a vampire and I'm just not sure how to speak English, so I just I don't even know where I'm going with this. So yeah, the explanation of my accent is probably considerably less interesting than you were anticipating, and I'm sorry for everyone that's really disappointed in the explanation. I wish I could make it better for you. I guess I do want to note that one thing that really annoys me about people listening to my accent, and look, I know that it's not for everyone because, you know, it is frustrating to listen to someone swap back and forth mid-sentence between one way of talking and another. I get that, it is frustrating, but, you know, it really irritates me when people think that I'm either putting it on or I'm doing this to be more interesting or whatever, but that's just not, I don't know anyone who would pick this, you know, who would pick to sound half and half, like no one with half a brain. Because I don't fit in anywhere. I don't fit in America because people are like, where are you from? And they're not even sure, they can't even like work it out. I mean, that being said, Americans are never 100% sure where you're from because they think Australia is in Austria, or in Europe at least. And let's be fair, Americans don't really know accents anyway, but with mine, they're even more like, I don't understand, did you just grow up in like a shed? Were you homeschooled? Are you homeschooled? So, you know, I can forgive the Americans for not being 100% about it, but in Australia, they're like, where are you from? So while it might be interesting and cute to some people, for a lot of people, the way that I sound is very much not interesting and cute and is very much annoying and frustrating. Yeah. I get this a lot actually from Americans where they'll say things like, you don't sound that Australian. And I always think to myself, yeah, but I grew up in Melbourne where I feel like the accent is not ridiculously strong and that a lot of people associate the Australian accent with Crocodile Dundee.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
Anyway, that's just why my accent sounds like it does. That's the really unexciting story. I grew up with an American parent and an Australian parent. Haha. As always, if you like the video, hit subscribe. If you want to leave a comment, I'm assuming there's not going to be any comments about my accent because I just explained it to you. So if you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so. Just don't be rude about it unless it's about how nice my sweater is. Tell me how nice it is. And I will see you guys next time.